the land from the way how God says how you should rule it.
Hakan particularly approves of Sharia law's range of harsh physical punishments for crimes, which would apply equally to children as adults.
There's a lot of punishments in Sharia law, and the way I see those punishments is like a deterrent. Same way as how Western worlds they use their nuclear weapons as a deterrent. Kids under 16, they're not eligible for punishment as, say, a full grown-up is.
And they ought to be.
I think everybody should be taken, be given a certain punishment for their actions, especially if it's really bad.
To live under Sharia law is still only something a minority of Muslims desire. In fact, what Muslims want varies a good deal, reflecting the diversity of opinion that exists within the community. For the most part, Muslim Britain does not speak with one voice. However, on a small number of issues, there is an important consensus of opinion, a consensus that is in direct conflict with the rest of the nation. In part 3, we shall see where the flashpoints lie. Muslim Britain wants many different things, but there are some issues on which there is a striking consensus. Conflict will be the result when this consensus is opposed to the values of British democracy. And for a tiny number of radicals, these are conflicts to be settled through violent action. Finding a way to deal with these issues, therefore, is vital.
If British society, if British politicians can't do deals with Muslims where there's a strong Muslim consensus, then we really do have a problem, because then moderate Muslims will be thrown back onto the radicals' agenda.
One of the fundamental values that Britain holds dear is freedom of speech. But it's a value which Muslim Britain rejects. An overwhelming number of British Muslims believe that free speech must have its limits, that no one should be allowed to insult their religion. These tensions came to a head when the Danish cartoons depicting the Prophet Muhammad with a bomb on his turban were circulated all over the world.
They have come together to insult the Messenger Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
In London, extreme protests followed, showing both the fury of some Muslims and the severity of the punishments they appeared to demand. Although only held by a very small minority, it is these views that seem to pose the greatest threat to the tolerance that so defines this country. To understand why some Muslims take such an uncompromising position, I talked to Mohammed, a 23-year-old British-born Muslim. He lives in North London with his family, but wanted to meet me in a coffee shop. Mohammed studied at Art College and now works as a freelance graphic designer.
How do you feel about the, those cartoons that abused the name of the Prophet?
If people have cartoons insult the messengers, it affects globally the Muslims worldwide, not 1.5 Muslims in the UK, 1.5 billion Muslims around the world.
I mean, they were not published in this country.
Where was the condemnation? Where was the demand that these kind of cartoons be stopped and that people be punished?
Beheading the people who did it.
Yeah.
Is that what should have happened?
Now, in Islam, there is punishment for certain crimes. Like, for example, if somebody is murdered, we do have punishment in Islam, death penalty. Or somebody's raped, we believe in death penalty for them. The same thing, anybody who insults the messengers, any messenger, Jesus, Moses, Muhammad, we believe they have tested their sentence.
The offence caused by the Danish cartoons also led many more moderate Muslims to protest. They did not call for such extreme punishments, but they still wanted to stop the publication of anything that offended their religion.
At any time, when those insults.
People who publish the cartoon of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam should be punished to a certain extent, because that was so hurtful and it was so offensive. And you know what? Everyone should be sensitive towards other people's faith.
In Brixton, I met 29-year-old Abdul Haq, born a Christian, converted to Islam at 17. He's one of the many who believe there's no room for compromise on freedom of speech. A new law is the best way to ensure no one offends his religion.
From a non-Muslim perspective, we say free speech, you can basically say whatever you like. What's wrong with that?
The problem with that is that where the kind of boundaries or the limitations to that. That is the problem.
What are the boundaries and limitations for you?
For me, it would be kind of those things which maybe some people might hold as sacred.
But do you think we should have laws to state that?
It would be preferable, because otherwise, if there weren't these kind of legislations in place, then people are obviously going to get very irate. There are common grounds with regards to respecting each other. As I mentioned before, I wouldn't kind of disrespect any of your relatives or your family members or your mother.
So how do you stop people coming out onto the streets with placards saying, behead these people who abuse the name and image of the Prophet?
Even though we find that repulsive, behead those who insult Islam, at the same time, it's equally repulsive. I mean, that which sparked it off in the first place, it was equally repulsive, if not even more so.
It's really very clear that we have no centre ground on this issue. There are things that Muslims want protected as sacred and unassailable. And on the other hand, this is a secular society in which religious sensitivities are hardly an issue. So either we self-censor or we publish and we create mayhem.
Further conflict may be unavoidable, as Muslims are united in wishing to curb the right to speak freely. But an even greater conflict is already taking place over the way the war on terror is being fought at home. The search for homegrown terrorists following the 7/7 bombings has become a major objective for the police and security services. But at the same time, the majority of the British Muslim population feels under attack.
I have been discriminated in this country because I wear this scarf. Yeah, because I carry this identity, I have been discriminated in this country. And it's not by any ordinary people in the country, it's by police as well. Yeah, police that are, in control from the government.
And 4 out of 10 of all Muslims surveyed say the police stop and search too many Muslims. The danger is, with Muslims increasingly opposed to the actions of the police, the task of finding terrorists could be seriously undermined. Events such as the flawed raid on a Muslim home in Forest Gate make matters still worse.
This is the first time I've been on a demonstration like this. I really feel strongly about it, so that's why I come out. I brought my children along so they learn when something is not right, that they come out and protest.
It's clear that police actions are alienating the Muslim community, but the police need Muslims to be on their side to gather better intelligence. At the moment, Muslims are still on side. 8 out of 10 that we questioned said that someone who knew of a terrorist act and did not report it would be to blame. And half believe as much as the terrorists themselves. But if this number drops, it will become even harder for the police to stop further attacks. Abu Mumin lives in Forest Gate and works at a Muslim youth centre. He was the one who interrupted my conversation with the young man who wouldn't condemn the 7/7 bombings and told him that Muslims should live according to the laws of this country. But he feels strongly that the government is making it increasingly hard for Muslims to help in the fight against terrorism.
And I think Tony Blair, he single-handedly managed to create this unnecessary tension by saying the Muslim community is not cooperating, is not working hard enough. I mean, are we like sitting in our backside doing nothing?
No.
We're working hard, aren't we?
Yeah, of course. No one acknowledges that. Not even the media, community leaders. I don't know.
There's a lot of positive work, isn't it?
But it's not been acknowledged in any ways.
I went to meet Abu at the youth centre after work to ask him about how British anti-terror laws are working on the ground.
Can I just ask what effect the whole Forest Gate raid has had on the community?
The whole community are angry with the police. I think the young, the old. I think it's very important that the young especially begin to see that there is due process. We need to feel that we can trust the police again, because that was a very big blunder. I live in Forest Gate. It's in my backyard. It could have been me shot by the police. 200 police officers coming in and to arrest 2 people.
But Abu was clear that terrorism does have to be tackled, and that the community needs to get behind the police.
There will be many in the community who never had much faith in the police to begin with. Why does it now matter so much if whatever the confidence they did have evaporates?
If there are criminals in our community, then they need to be flushed out. They need to be dealt with. We live in difficult times, and people are living in fear. And what the politicians mustn't do, the police mustn't do, is add fuel to the fire.
Muslims are taking to the streets on everything from freedom of speech to the war on terror. The fear is that if Muslims think no one is listening to them, the point will come where some will feel protesting is no longer enough. But our survey shows that a vast majority of Muslims already say that no one body speaks on their behalf.
I think everyone should speak out. Every Muslim should speak out when they've got something to say. Because at the moment, there isn't anyone really there to represent us, and that's what we need.
I went to Bolton to meet two brothers, Zulfi Bukhari, a marketing manager, and his brother Ashgar, a 35-year-old business consultant. They have set up the Muslim Public Affairs Committee UK. MPAC were holding a meeting to recruit new members. Their aim? To try to stop the anger of young Muslims turning into violence. They want Muslims to engage in the democratic process.
What happened last July? That was Muslims setting the agenda, wasn't it? But did they represent you? That's shocking, isn't it? Someone set the agenda again for 1.8 million Muslims in this country and 1 billion outside. And we had no say in it. If we don't like what's going on, guess what? We can change it. It's not going to be easy, but life ain't easy, tough, live with it. Who currently in the UK represent Muslims? Is it MAB, MPAC, Nassim Hamid, Amir Khan, Danny Williams? Who? Who represents us? Is it our mosque leaders? It doesn't matter. Whichever one of those examples I've picked, Muslims are not being represented.
Ashgar's organisation has made a point of targeting the traditional Muslim leadership for failing to speak up.
We say that every single Muslim institution and every single Muslim leader is negligent in tackling terrorism. Why should another 50 people have to die? Why should the Muslims have to suffer a backlash? All because those pathetic Muslim leaders have not lifted a single finger. If MPAC had its way, these mafia goons in our mosque would have an open day once a month and invite every single non-Muslim into the mosque for a meal. Not to convert them, but to say, what do you fear about Muslims? What don't you understand? Do you think we're all terrorists? Is that what you think, we're all dodgy? Ask me and let me explain it to you.
But you're also saying if your arguments fail, eventually people will have to take up arms.
We're not advocating that they do, but the proof is that they have. Look at 7/7. Look at 911.
Ashgar clearly believes that the failure of the traditional Muslim leadership to speak out on behalf of angry young Muslims could lead to some taking violent action. But this would only ever be a minority. The real danger is that as young Muslims separate themselves from Britain, their understanding for such acts will grow. I ended my journey back in Stoke and met up with Azad Yassin, a taxi driver. His life used to be the same as many other taxi drivers in this Midlands town, but today it's completely different, and the speed of that transformation captures just how quickly the Muslim community is changing. Less than 6 months ago, Azad spent most of his time with non-Muslim friends, who even gave him a new first name, a Christian name.
The nickname given to me by some of my mates, and the English mates, used to be James, because they used to think I'm that ahead in their culture, in their way of life.
If I'd met you 4 months ago, what would you be wearing? What would you look
Just normal English clothes, jeans, t-shirt, jacket or something. Hair would be, obviously I've got a hat on now, but the hair would have been cut, brown hair, designed, fashioned.
Beard?
No beard, no moustache, clean shaven.
But now that Azad has rediscovered Islam, he sees his old way of life as incompatible with his religion.
You were turning your back on bad times.
Yeah, I told him, you have no peace. You argue with your wife, you don't look at your kids, you don't come in, you stay out till late at night with your friends. You're just not bothered about anything. There's no inner peace. You can never get that inner peace through alcohol, through good-looking women, through going on holiday to owning a Mercedes.